So yeah, thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone who is joining us already. I know we are waiting for other participants, but we are here. So my name is Alina Sherban. I'm a lawyer and a well-being coach. And I have the privilege today to present and introduce our colleague, Malcolm McNeil. It's Aaron Fox partner and very important person in Beverly Hills Bar Association. We have this privilege to have it with us. And my sister, Andrea Sherban, she's also lawyer and well-being coach, and she's chair of Beverly Hills Work-Life Balance Committee. So welcome, Malcolm. Welcome in this beautiful day and having this beautiful webinar about well-being, where everybody has to share the tools, and it's going to be very, very fun.
It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to participate. As you know, well-being has been something that we're concerned about as a normal concern in the practice of law, but at this time in the coronavirus COVID-19 era, it's become even more significant for all of us.
Yeah, it's true. And welcome, Andrea. I'm so glad being here, and we got to organize this webinar, Wellbeing Balance. It's first Zoom, actually, because I used to organize in a Beverly Hills location meetings for work-life balance, and we had a lot of success, and we found out, as Malcolm, you said, problems. Lawyers always they have faced these problems in a lot of stress and uncertainty, and this period of of pandemic, it's kind of something very useful for lawyers. So this webinar, I'm sure, is going to be beyond this period that it's so necessary. Is going to be something that lawyers are going to benefit for the future. So I'm so glad we get together, and we are here and to share some coping strategy for well-being and for work-life balance. So I'm very glad and very honored having this privilege, and thank you, Beverly Hills Bar Association, because lawyers are so stressful, and we have to bring some value. Actually, I have a question for you, Malcolm, because I know you have a lot of experience in practicing law, and well-being is such an important subject in the productivity of lawyers. What is the in your career, in your profession, in your experience, the challenges you met in this aspect of well-being?
Well, I'm going to suggest that Alex move the slides to the next slide, and I'll answer that for you. Many years ago, you said I've had a lot of experience, so I know that's your way of saying that I'm an old guy here. So, but let me say that I started my own office about a year out of law school, and I knew at that time that practicing law was a challenging profession, because we're usually involved in contests and disputes and negotiations day in and day out. And that's just part of the practice, whether we're in-house counsel. That's what we all have in common: in-house counsel, negotiators, litigators, contract lawyers, M&A lawyers. We all seem to have those types of challenges. And I learned early on that I had to really, it's going to sound a little bit trite, and I can give you practical examples, but what I learned early on is that you have to constantly prioritize what it is that you're doing. Otherwise, everything seems important, and whenever everything seems important, problems seem insurmountable. It seems like you're doing 5 things at once that are urgent. And I've learned that I thought it was a waste of time in my earliest years to always make lists and to prioritize. And then I learned later, very soon, but later, that if I was to sit down and jot down the things that I had to do, and not just write them down, but actually focus on them and say, well, this is an A, and this is a B, and this is a C, it automatically took my stress level down, because then everything seemed more manageable. And that was the earliest tool that I identified. And with our associates in the office, because we have a well-being and a wellness program internally that we've always had, but we've stepped it up since COVID-19. But in that program, we tell the associates, with everything that is being thrown at you, partners too, but primarily associates who are new to the process of working with the partners and making sure that they're at a distance pace, and they're anxious about assignments and so forth, that we tell them, look, in that process, the way that you're going to cope is by you having a plan, by you prioritizing. And I think that's very important for Andrea's first quote, which is here on the screen.
Yes, actually, this is a code that it comes from my experience, because as you know, I've been practicing law. We've been practicing law more than 20 years, and we start building our law firm. And you can imagine a lot of stress without experience in the beginning. And we went through all the stressful period and mistakes and challenges. And I realized something. I realized that when you face problems and obstacles, you have to find a solution, because we found solution for our clients, and we have done a lot of work, and we help so many businesses to grow. But I realized that it's important to find a solution how we can grow ourselves and our well-being. Because when you practice in a lot of stress, with a lot of anxiety and responsibilities, you feel all the stress, but you can wait for others to help you and to bring you a solution. If you are not realizing, you are not aware that something it's distortionate, is something, it's weird there. So I realized that we have to help self first. So this is the quote that comes for me from experience, because after practicing law, we faced all these problems, and after we realized that we have to do something to bring more well-being, and we start doing something for ourselves, practicing a lot of personal development courses, workshops, yoga. After we realized that we want to go forward, and we studied psychology and becoming a coach for well-being. And this is the quote that I really think that it's very important. I hope it's inspiring for people, that they want to find help by themselves first, and after going and reaching people that they are specialized in helping them. As you said, Malcolm, it's very interesting that you said this. You find out your tools, like Andrea said, because we had this time growing in our law firm and our profession without many tools. Today we have internet, we have seminars, we have courses, we have so many tools that we can join and we can share. But in our time, 30 years ago, we didn't have these tools. As you said, you figure out by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The best, right?
Without a doubt. And go to the next slide, because I think the next slide is part of what creates that little basket of tools. But yes, when I started practicing law, there was no internet. And the way that I ended up developing that, the reason why I'm involved in the Beverly Hills Bar Association, I'm a passionate supporter of the Bar Association. I've been president of an international association and member of the LACBA, and I'm active in the ABA-SIL. And all of that was the origins were that I used my network of professionals in order to develop my skills. And I used that network of professionals to keep my stress level down, because when I started my practice, I wanted to do everything. And one day an immigration case walks in, another day a DUI case comes in, another day somebody is having a rent control fight in Santa Monica. So it wasn't that I was just taking whatever came through the door, it's that I wanted the experience. But at the same time, that each one of those new matters raises the stress level, and as a consequence, you better have a method of being able to deal with it, not as a problem, but as an opportunity. I think it's always a matter of perspective too. If a client comes to you with a new new problem, you can either react to it and go, oh no, I've not seen this before, and this is something that's really challenging, and gosh, do I have self-doubt? Can I handle it? Do I have the skills? Am I good enough? And you can go that route, or you can see it as an opportunity for growth. You can see it as an opportunity to say, you know what, I've never done this before. This is going to be good for my own well-being. This is going to be good for my own sense of worth, because I'm going to do things. I'm going to enhance my abilities. I'm going to help this client respond to this. So I think it starts with being strong, but being strong is part of the characteristics that are on this particular slide.
Yes, it's very interesting, because lawyers' mindset is to be strong, you know, but to be strong in order to cover and to hide all these emotions, and everything comes out from the inside, and to be strong, faith, you know, showing something very, very like strong, because clients want us strong. And I remember that I kept so much to this image. I was so attached to being strong and to face and to make sure my clients I'm a strong person and I can resolve their cases. But I sacrificed my inner, you know, well-being. And when we go to physical well-being, and this it was the point when in my life I realized that my body is talking to me, you know, because I had a lot of pain in my back and in my neck and my back. It was hurting me. I was like crying, sitting in my office. I spent so many hours, and I was like crying, and my body try to tell me something, but I didn't realize that it's a problem there. And when I were like going through meetings and having so much tension in my body, all the doctors, they said it's nothing pathological, it's no problem there with your body, but I still felt like so much pain. And I'm pretty sure that now if I have had this awareness in that period, it is everything about stress and anxiety, and how you approach situation, how you approach profession. And our body is talking to us. It's not lying us. Our body has signals, and our body actually wants to protect us. And all this dysfunction, all these signs, all these blockages are actually protecting us, are there for us to tell us now it's time to do something different to make it.
No, I agree with that. I mean, you know, it's funny because I don't want to get too metaphysical here, because I want to give people some practical examples of how they can, let's say, control their stress levels, etc. But you're right. When it says stay strong, I was actually talking to a client of mine who is a psychologist, and I've helped them with their practice and the development of their practice. And we were talking about, he was saying that when he's dealing with patients, he has to evaluate the patient and what the patient is, let's say what the personality of the patient is, in order to develop what style is going to be appropriate for the best treatment for that person's mental health. And I think we need to do that as lawyers too, but we don't do it. In other words, some clients want us to be strong, and they want their attorney to go into court with a sword and to be able to slay the dragon on the other side, or to defeat somebody in negotiations. But other clients are looking for lawyers with more empathy and more, let's say, ability to act in a mediative capacity, but as a lawyer. And one of the other things that I tell to lawyers when I'm working on our associate training and in other environments, I say, evaluate your client. What kind of lawyer does the client want? Because sometimes we assume, and if we assume that every client wants us to be strong all the time, that's going to manifest itself in backaches and neck aches and not sleeping well and not eating well, because we're going to eat fast so that we can get back to work and get something done. And the next thing you know, we want to have a 3-martini lunch and a 3-martini dinner. So the issue is that we should that the starting point is assess who it is, and if we're in-house counsel, assess who it is that you're supervising lawyer, who it is that and what their personality is and what their expectations are, because then you can meet the expectations without having every problem come up that raises the stress to a 200 limit.
Yeah, so very interesting what the personality is. This is very important, because I believe when you are authentic and you work in an authentic state, it's less stress and less anxiety, because anxiety is an emotion characterized by a feeling of tension and worried thoughts. So being authentic, this worried thoughts, I'm good, I'm not good, doesn't exist anymore there. You understand? So this is my belief, that when we are authentic in front of the client, we are less stressed, and we are what we are. We are trying to do our best, actually, and there is no stress anymore. Yes, and I agree, Malcolm, what you said. You have to choose your client very well. And also it's important to position yourself in front of the client, because from there you transmit to the client what kind of client and what kind of relation. Is matter of boundaries. So when you know your position, when you know yourself that you want to be well-being, you want to be in a well-being state, you make your position very clear. So when you have this clarity about your position, that's for you, it's as a lawyer, you are first human being, and for you it's important, your well-being. So first you respect yourself, and from there you put boundaries for clients. I remember when I was practicing this stressful and anxiety, I was like, I had fear to go to eat lunch, so I had
Yep.
heartbeat to go to eat my lunch, and I felt guilty having my lunch. But when you go through the mindset that for me it's important, the well-being, and I'm gonna put for me first boundaries, and from there the clients, they will understand what matters, how many times they can call me, what is the time when I finish working. From there starts all the process of being in a more well-being, but from outside. When you start from inside, putting this reference for yourself, the outside world is receiving your message. And also in a physical state, a little tips I want to give for lawyers, because we are here and I want to share something. To make pause when you work, it's important, the pose when you stay with your physical in your table, you have to make some exercises and to check up, to pay attention to your body when you work, to see how does feel your body. And if you feel a little bit tension in your body, just stop for a few seconds and do some exercises, just a little, breathing or moving your hands or touching and doing some stretching. It's important, like, to be aware about the body, so this is important.
Well, I fully agree. And I want to go back to something that Alina said a minute ago regarding being authentic. I've been practicing law a long time, and clients rely on me, and clients come to me, and in the early days I was told never tell, or don't feel you have to have all of the answers right away, because if you have all those answers, if you think that you have to have all the answers right away, you're going to, number one, you don't have them. So number two, you're going to be playing games in terms of how you demonstrate your capabilities to a client. And an old timer at that time that I used to joke with, he said himself that he's been practicing law so long that his bar number was in Roman numerals. And one of the things he said to me was, my boy, I'm going to tell you right now that what you do is you tell them that you're going to get them the answer. Okay. In other words, not that we have the answer, but we're going to get them the answer. And tying this to the pandemic, this has never been more real for me after having practiced law for more than 30 years. Here I am having 5 phone calls in one day from a client after the CARES Act has been enacted, and there's questions regarding PPP and and whether or not they're eligible for benefits, etc. And our firm has a task force, and even with the task force, keeping track of everything of eligibility, deadlines, capabilities, what had to be filled out, how they filled it out. All of that was being thrown at us, and it was a rush. And I told the clients that I'll get back to you. And I had to have, and I have the good news is I've been practicing long enough that I had the, let's say, the confidence to say, look, I'm not sure, but I'm going to find out exactly whether or not you have a number of employees that's eligible for PPP. Let me find out when the deadline was. And I the way I was able to navigate through, for example, in one example, 7 emergency phone calls in 1 hour, 7 emergency phone calls in an hour. What I did was that I told them that I would arrange arrange and I would get back, and then I reordered my planning, and I was able to provide the responses because I didn't feel the need to be able to rush to an instant answer. And that is really the key. The key is making sure that no one feels obligated to let the clients determine what is an emergency for us. It may be an emergency for the client, but make sure that that you control how the client perceives their own problems in many cases, and it's up to you to help quell that and help moderate the client's feelings of anxiety and apprehension. And I ended up responding, and everybody responded in good time, and I was able to use resources that we had, including those within the BHBA, because we've had some excellent programs on these topics, and I was able to navigate through and give meaningful advice without saying, well, I don't know, nobody has that answer yet, nobody knows. Those aren't the answers the client wants to hear. They want to hear, will you help me get this answer? Yes, I will. When will you get to me? Tomorrow, the next day. I had appointments on Tuesday and I set up conferences on Friday. In other words, I managed the calendar so that I was able to also make sure the client realized I was there. So that's part of what you do internally in order to deal with that.
Yes, and it's true. This is very important because when you act like this, the clients will feel he's safe because you transmit to the clients, I'm here working for you and I'm coming back to you. So the clients feel safe. If the clients feel safe, it's very important. Very important. After the clients will trust that you have to work for him. So this relationship with clients and lawyers is important from the aspect of anxiety of the clients, because many times we have to deal with very anxious clients and they put so much pressure for, so when you use like this, linguistic tools, and you say, I'm gonna come back, I'm working for you, I'm doing this for you, the clients realize and feels safe. This is very important too, and this is good strategy, and I'm sure the results comes.
Let me jump in. We're going to save questions for the end, but we have a very, very salient and perceptive lawyer on the line who has asked the question: how do you set boundaries with clients who panic, criticize you for not sitting at your desk when you respond rapidly, but they are anxious when the bill comes, they don't want to pay? I know what you are saying, but clients are not rational. Do you tell them that you charge for calls or not to call so much? Well, I have my own. Let's put it this way. I won't say that I have a love-hate relationship with clients, but I have a very open discussion with clients regarding payment. Having had my own office for 20 years, I learned very early on that what this particular participant is saying is a very real example. The clients, are aggravated. They want advice instantly, but when it comes time to pay, they don't want to pay because the advice was, say, inadequate. Before I respond to that, why don't I throw it out to you ladies in the wellness arena as to how you would respond?
Okay, when it comes to boundaries, first we have, especially in relationship with the clients, to have clarity. To being clarity, it's more power. When you have clarity, you have power. Because when you transmit to the clients and you make a very nice, very kind email, and you let them know your way of working, having organized or to being organized and clarity, it's already a big step towards setting boundaries. Because when you send the email and you are very clear and you let them know how it's your way of working, and you are very detailed about this process, and after you make sure that they understand what you are saying, and you ask them, you have any question regarding our way of working, from there already you start to build a relationship, and in a kind way. It's not necessary to be reactive, but if you set this clarity and you make this email, I think this is the first step. When the client starts to being very pressure and very anxious with you, you can also remind him the way of collaboration, and also to make sure that everything it's going to be structured. in your collaboration. So this, I think, is very, very important to start the collaboration.
Well, I fully agree, but let me add, or not, but, and let me add one thing, and that is that the clarity starts in the beginning. What happens is that clients in their own minds have, there's an arc. And the arc is that they start with a very anxious problem. They come to you, they pay you for that problem, they sign an engagement letter, and the lawyer thinks that they're done because oftentimes there's a very, very little discussion with the client over the exact amount of time it's going to take or what the responsiveness will be, etc. I learned a long time ago that the clarity has to come from the very start. So when the client comes and says that, I give them hints, by the way, and some of the hints which I'll give to this participant is when the client comes to me, I say, look, what I really ask you to do is to make sure, you don't have to say, I will bill you for every 6 minutes of time that I spend with you, but you can say something else, which is what I say, and that is, just want to let you know that when you save me time, you save you money. Because when you use my time, I will bill you for that time, so let's be efficient. It's one of my favorite lines. So clients remember that from the very first meeting. That not that Malcolm said, I'm going to charge you for every penny, but I said, I'm going to bill you for my time. So the clarity comes at that point, and the clarity also comes with giving a client advance notice. Because a lot of times I've seen, I was at one time on the Los Angeles County Bar Attorney-Client Relations Committee, where the attorneys were being, let's say, they were called on to, they weren't, it was not a state bar complaint, but it was just a case where we would step in and try and mend the attorney-client relationship where they had problems. And most of those times it was the client, I would say 75% of the time, the client was complaining about not returned phone calls or not unanswered emails, those kinds of things. And that's another thing that I incorporated at the beginning for clarity. I said, I want you to know that I receive a lot of emails every day and a lot of phone calls every day, and you need to tell me if what is going on is elevated to a level of urgent or not urgent. And I'm going to trust you until I find out that what you've told me was not urgent when I've elevated you beyond other people's issues and problems. So let me know at your time. You need to let me know what your timing is. And if you don't give me timing, I know that I will fit it in with my schedule with everything else that I'm doing. So clarity requires having those kinds of frank, frank, honest, clear discussions, but you don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to, we can use the euphemisms as long as the euphemisms create clarity. And those are the things that my clients remember. And when they tell me that they don't want to pay the bill or they want a bill cut, my practice has always been that I would give somebody a tiny fraction, never a specific amount, a tiny fraction of a reduction and say, this is the only time. Because we all know the clients like to negotiate each and every time. But if you have clarity to begin with, you'll minimize those kinds of issues with the clients. So I do agree that clients are not rational all the time, but we can drag them to rationality. And so if they're not rational, slow things down and bring them back to reason.
Actually, those tools, we wrote about this in our book, More Than a Lawyer, that is going to become soon. And whatever my sister talk and you talk, we've put in our book where we give solution for lawyers in those situations. I think we have to go to the next slide.
I think so. Yeah, the next one is a good one.
Yes, it's aligned. No, the next one. No, this aligned. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, engage and grow. We sort of skipped a little bit over a line because of the question, but I think engage and grow is perfect.
I think align, it was about being aligned with the values and also putting boundaries. Your value, it's a matter of alignment with the grow. And
well, let me just say one thing about that too, so that it's not too much of a, again, too much in the atmosphere, too much, but something more down to earth. When we say align life and work to serve your values, That is exactly true. I think many of us have different values. We should have some of the same basic values, but a lot of what I call the second tier values may be different. You need to know what those values are and identify them for yourself and actually be able to articulate them. If you can't articulate them, then you are not clear in your own values. And that in and of itself is going to create stressors, because we all know that things come up where there's competing values, and if there's competing values, that creates a separate problem for and raises the stress level. So you
Yes.
need to step back and determine what's important for you.
I like to add something in values. When you know your values, you are grounded and you are more credible. This is very important to know. When you are grounded in your values, you can go, a little bit right or left, because you know your value and you stand for your values. So
and we talk about being paid. We are paid for our values.
Exactly.
It's very important
to have this mindset.
Yeah.
I'm sharing value and I bring value for clients. So this, to know your value as a lawyer, it's so important, because from there the client will understand for what he is paying. This is something that you have to be aware. And again, be aware, and after the client will understand.
Communicate.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. And let me add one more thing on that, and it has to go to the client paying or not paying. I try and tell, I not try, in all cases, tell a client that I am a partner with you. The problem is when you have business clients, a lot of times when they have their own businesses and they've been working hard, etc., the paying of you as a lawyer makes them think a certain way, which is that you're basically a vendor and you're delivering the sheets and the towels to the motel, or you're delivering the food products to the restaurant, and I can sort of treat you whatever way I want because I am paying you. And I think it's important that you also, because I tell clients at the outset that, in these matters, you and I are partners. We're partners in the sense that we're collaborating. I need information from you. You have an expectation of my expertise and my handling, and most important, you're trusting my judgment. So judgment can be exercised in different ways. So if you don't like the manner in which I'm exercising my judgment, we have to talk about it. And if I don't like the manner in which you're handling the matter, I'm going to let you know about it. So that way you elevate and you make sure that you're on an even keel, and you take it out of the dollars and cents proposition and make it truly a situation that we're sitting on the same side of the table trying to work out a resolution for you, and whatever the thing may be.
Yes, this is important.
Let's see the next slide. Finally, engage and grow.
I like this.
Can I jump in on this real quick? Because I love this slide. One of the and I'll jump to the one that says continuously learn and develop. Again, we all have different personalities, etc. But part of the thing that I think separates lawyers from others, and even from other professions, is that we went to law school and learned a lot, and read a lot of cases, learned a lot of different fact patterns, and when we become lawyers, even if we highly specialize, we will see different fact patterns. And I think that a lot of time, but the flip side of that is that we tend to do a lot of things by repetition. And so we pull out the same contract, or we pull out the same letter, or we pull out the same language, and we do things in the same way, which sometimes inhibits the learning and growth process. And and that's because it's easier. It's easier to do that, but it's also it's a little bit self-destructive, because what happens is the main thing that brought us to the law, the curiosity, the excitement, the helping others, all of those things sort of go secondary to just getting the job done. And the minute we realize that our job is not just getting a job done, but the methodology of getting the job done, which means learn and develop. The minute we stop learning and develop, we will start to lose satisfaction in the job. And I used an example way back when I decided to open my own office. One of the lawyers who had been practicing law for 20 years in a very narrow area said that his quote to me at that time was, "Yeah, I've been practicing law for 20 years and I feel like I've had 1 year's experience 20 times."
Yes.
And that hit me, and now I'm still talking about it 30 plus years later. And I learned that, my God, the last thing that I want to do is to be practicing the same 1 year of law 30 times. I'd rather be learning and growing, and each of us has to decide how we do learn and develop, because that's how we then end up getting satisfaction in the practice of law, even if we're narrowly defined in what we're doing.
Yes, I love this topic. And when I'm reading Engage and Grow, I want to remind about our present moment in this period and the purpose of this webinar being in pandemic period, because a lot of people, they come in this period and they have a lot of challenges, a lot of unknown, and a lot of difficult time and crisis. And I think that this time is the most important time, having opportunity to grow and to reborn ourselves, because we go in the period that everything is going to be different. Nothing is going to be the same. So we have this opportunity through this challenges, through this period of difficult time, to grow. And I'm seeing this picture with the bonsai, how it's growing, the beauty through difficult time, and how when you give birth and something, it's getting you birth, you give a birth, it's something, it's difficult in the beginning, but after it's going to be the beauty. So I think this period you have to take advantage and to see what we are growing in this period, and how we grow our resources, and to take time and to stay with us and to reflect what is the most important for me now, how is going to be my new me, how I want to reborn myself and reinvent. And especially for lawyers, they have now time to restructure, to reborn, and to reinvent themselves, because now it's time. We have time, and we have a new perspective. We have to make something to switch the mindset, new behavior, new way of practicing. Already we use this technology. And until now, I used to grow, and my sister and I, we did this work of growing through our relationship, through being also partners so many years. And we grow through experience, first of all, experience with each other's relationship, and also experience through our work, because each client is different, as you said. And through differences, you have a big opportunity to be curious and to see what is different in other people's mindset. And this is our tools to grow.
I would add, if I can, I would add, before growing, it's so important to be grateful for whatever you have in the present moment. And I would like to share with you exercise, micro steps of starting being grateful. And it's coming in my mind, the exercise spontaneous like this. When you are drink water, for example, each time you are drinking water, think to 3 things for what you are grateful. 3 things that you are grateful in your life each time you drink water.
So you grow.
You grow your awareness about the present moment, your awareness about your value, and being grateful. It's the start of the beginning of the growth, in my opinion.
Nice.
Well, we have a question here that says, all this is well and good, but what if I am threatened in my financial stability? Okay. Which is the last point. Mm-hmm. And that's a really critical key and really a critical component. I mean, we all know that we should all budget, but we all don't necessarily budget as well as we should. And in this context of the pandemic, I've been talking to people. I've had the good fortune to because of the breadth of the practice, I've been too busy, and that too busy is, and I shouldn't even say that, because I should be grateful that I'm busy, because some of my colleagues, the clients have dried up. They've either gone away, or they're not paying, or there's other issues, and there's going to be repercussions for the next several months. And there's a broader issue there, and the broader issue is, I've known sometimes lawyers have said to me, well, I have to be careful, because if I talk that bluntly to a client, maybe I'm going to lose them as a client. Well, going back to a comment earlier, if clarity with a client is going to cause you to lose that client, they're probably an ungrateful client, and you should probably be marketing for another one, because it's once the client starts expecting you to be a yes person and to provide them all the answers that they want to hear, and for you to reason always into their viewpoint, then at that point you need to sort of get the client settled and centered and say, look, you're going against my advice, but I'll advocate for you, of course, as long as it's ethical and so forth. But if it is not ethical, then obviously you need to get rid of them anyway. But on the financial stability end of it, some lawyers feel they are required to keep a client because of the financial considerations. And for those, I know that's a real tough thing, because do you keep a client who is ungrateful in order to pay the rent? Or do you not keep that client who is ungrateful and fire them and have financial instability? And the answer to that is really a long-term growth of and marketing strategy. So it's a twofold issue. Number one, you should be working and circling those areas where you are going to develop clients in the areas that you wish to work with, and you need to cultivate the relationships with the clients, and you need to work your way to a position where no one client is going to define who you are as a lawyer or define what your practice is. And I've lived that, trying to have a broad range of clients. I've had clients file bankruptcy, I've had clients die, I've had clients move, but none of them have affected the practice because there's been a broad range, and that kind of diversity in your practice helps create financial stability. And then, of course, control your own house.
Yes.
And control your house means do your appropriate budgeting, know what you need to do, know what you need to achieve, know what you need to do to get the level of stability that will lower your stress level.
Yes, I want to add something, and it's very important aspect, and I can understand that it is another very important struggle in this period, the financial part, and the many lawyers and a lot of people, they are facing these problems, with financial, but we can see this in different ways, because the most important is how you see things, how you respond to problems and to challenges. And if we see from one perspective, like opportunity to grow, how you can see growing in this, because it's difficult to see why I'm struggling, I don't have to pay or to eat, or and I have this fear. I mean, there it's choices. We always have choices. We always have choices how to see things. And one thing is to see that it's a real time, important time, to put boundaries, to define my values, to realize what kind of clients, and to visualize what kind of life I deserve and I want to have. This is one perspective. Another way, it's a way where you choose to stay in the fear, right? And to feel this fear, what is gonna happen, if I lose this client? And for me, I think in this period, when all of us, we have a call to be more authentic and to be more open and to be more human, and to know that this is period of pandemic reminds us that we all go through the same problems. And when we go and we realize that we can communicate and we can start from the point of understanding that we are in the same boat, we have the courage to speak from different place, from the heart, from human to human, and to realize that it's going to be authentic talk. I'm going to do my best, you're going to do your best, and to have this dialogue and to be authentic and acting from the place of love. And from that place, you're going to build more, strength in your relationship. You're gonna build more strength in relationship with yourself, because your self-esteem is gonna be grow, because you are authentic with yourself, and you understand what are your needs. But second, you're gonna make a practice how is to communicate from the place of love and the authentic relationship, and not from the fear. Right?
Well, without a doubt, go to the, I would propose we go to the next slide, because that's exactly, that is, this directly relates to this, but I also want to acknowledge another question, or not a question, actually a comment from one of our participants, which I agree with 1,000%. And this participant says, maintaining a relationship with an ungrateful client tends to destroy our ability and opportunity to get new good clients. And the answer is absolutely, because if you have an ungrateful client and that client refers you to a new client, chances are you've already been characterized by the ungrateful client to the potential new client, and that potential new client already has a preconceived notion about you, which is probably not very good and may in fact perpetuate the process of whatever it is that the ungrateful client said. And ask any malpractice carrier, they will tell you that it's the ungrateful clients who tend to be the ones that would like to sue, or they get agitated, they don't want to pay their fees. There's a whole host of asking you to do things that are illegal, etc. So yes, the story is, don't get yourself into a position where you need to have an ungrateful client. Secondly, don't get yourself into a position where you have to rely on that client for your own well-being and financial stability. And third, if you have one, get rid of them. Remember, lawyers sometimes forget that we have the right to fire our clients. Obviously, I mean, of course, within boundaries. You can't do it on the eve of trial and so forth. We need to make sure we protect their interests. But I mean, as a general practice, we can say, somewhere in this process, the attorney-client relationship has broken down, and I'm not quite sure that we are a right fit for each one. So you may have to leave. And I've done that on many occasions.
That's why for those kind of situations, it's very important the support, to have support. And I know my sister created like a support group and WhatsApp in a work-life balance committee, right?
Yes, we have. This is very important place where we support each other, and because we struggle, most of lawyers, they are struggling with the same problem. So when you feel a little bit weak and you know that there is a support, this is a good point. You have more courage and you have support to act from the place where you build your strength and your self-confidence, because this is the most important thing. And it's true, you don't have to stay with with the toxic clients that are going to close the doors for your opportunities in life.
Because when you say no, you say yes for somebody else.
That exactly. And so I thank that participant for the comment, because it triggered that very important discussion now. Now, with respect to the current slide where we say build connection, belonging, and a reliable support network, this is in the context of social well-being in this slide. But I'm actually working with our associates all the time on building their marketing platform too. So this is social well-being, which also has a subpart which is marketing well-being, which basically says yes, you should be building your connections, but it dovetails into the comments we just made. Because if you are constantly marketing in whatever fashion that takes, marketing doesn't mean dialing for dollars. Marketing doesn't mean putting your name on a billboard or on a bus bench. What it means is getting out there and making sure people know who you are and what you do, and you're reliable. Then when you're reliable, then you're going to be somebody that somebody's going to remember at some point in time to contact you when the going gets tough and you need a lawyer. So, and also if you're marketing all the time, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be better suited to get rid of that ungrateful client, as we talked about earlier, because you're going to have a flow and you're going to be able to decide who you're going to do business with. So that was on the marketing end of it. So I'll turn it over to you, ladies, regarding the social end of it.
Yes, now comes in my mind an interview. I was asked by somebody talking about networking and what happens when the people, they go and they network in different with different topics. And I was speaking about networking because it was the comment asking, well, what if you go to networking and you don't have something to get from there, And I say, okay, when you go to networking and when you go to build networking and social connection, it's exactly about building connection. And when you go with this mindset, first of all, to be curious, to know each other, to know, to build relationship from person to person and not from business to business, because our business is a prolongation for who we are. And from there, it's a cascade, everything comes to, to our trust, credibility, and to be reliable and all this stuff. So when you go to get people and to have this networking and have connection. Be curious and first think about connection, about how, you know, who is this person, what is interesting, how is special, how makes a difference, and ask these questions, you know, because the mindset of people going getting in touch with other people, it's very painful to think like I have to get something and I have to take home the business and only this stuff. You have to live experience, you know, you have to create experience and moments, because life is about moments. And if somebody, as you said, is gonna remind about the experience with you through that moment. So be aware about the connection and from which place you create this connection. Because if you are going to create a connection from the place I have to get something and I have this interest and this is my focus, this is gonna destroy the relationship.
Well, I fully agree with you, because I've had, when I've spoken to lawyers who go out to network and they say, you know, I've attended 3 meetings and I haven't gotten a client. And I said, well, how do you know? They said, well, I know because I've been to 3 meetings and I haven't gotten a client. I said, I know, but what happens when that person calls you next year? Okay. And we all have stories, I'm sure, about, I have another saying, and my saying is, you never know where the next client is going to come from. And I gave a great example where I gave out gifts to the parking attendants in our building. And one day, and I spent a lot of time in China, and they knew that I was going to China. And one day, 3 years into my relationship in the building, I get a phone call from one of the parking attendants in the building saying that there was a Chinese gentleman in the parking that was upset because there was a lawyer that was supposed to meet him in the building with a prominent firm, and that lawyer wasn't there, and he knows that I work with China. Would I like to meet with that person? I'm sitting at my desk, and I said, okay. And it was a perfect example. Client came, retained me. It just so happened that but they had this idea. I was networking, even though I didn't know it, with the parking attendant. Yeah. If you go to networking meetings, you are networking, and if you're going to measure it by how many clients you get out of that meeting, you're doomed. Yeah. You need to measure it by the fact of what you just said. I measure it by I made many connections, and then you have your follow-up and follow-through and all of that. But the idea is you measure it by connections, because the connections will eventually, hopefully, if you've done your homework after the connection, it will lead to client development.
Yes, because you leave your value there.
I would like to pass to the next slide, because
this is our last one, I think.
Yeah, it's feel well. It's a very important topic, like improving your emotional intelligence. Something that we didn't learn from our school of law school. Emotional intelligence is something that we have to be aware and to learn in our life. Tell us a little bit about emotional intelligence. I know you had a dissertation on this topic.
Yes, it's my favorite topic, emotional intelligence, because when it comes to stress, to anxiety, to all this difficult time and period that put our system in this reactive state of flight, freeze, or fly, it comes from this emotional intelligence, because we have, as you know, we have 2 brains. We have our limbic brains in the backside of the head, that it's everything there. It comes from our life experience and for all the emotions. And we have also neocortex in the prefrontal brain, that there comes to the conscious actions and the choices we make conscious, because we make also unconscious choices from the limbic brain, like a primitive brain. And this comes from experience. And as we said, every person is different, and every person has a different kind of representation for the same event. So we have to have in mind, when we have this awareness, we know how to manage our emotion in the relationship, even with the clients. Because here the risk is to take and to project, to allow clients to project their emotion on ourselves, or we can do the same with to another people. Because the projection means the state when you can receive, when you can hold your emotion, so you feel to project on other people. So when it comes to emotional intelligence, this is a very important topic to work and to go through. And I hope maybe we make a special a specific webinar.
Can you train emotional intelligence?
Yes, for emotional intelligence, because this is very important. First of all, for coping in this period, and to go and to realize what is the state of emotional intelligence. And there it's a specific strategy. First, you have to acknowledge what happens with yourself. So acknowledging what you feel, this is the first step. After, you have to make choices and to shift the emotions, and from there comes the whole management of emotional balance, because we work with emotional balance. So this is very important tools we have to take in consideration. So I would love to make a webinar with emotional balance.
I agree with you, and I think one of the practical tools that we can do to do that is, by the way, because yes, letting clients project the importance of their matter onto you when it might be way out of whack with the actual importance, but they have their own emotional issues attached to their issues, is that we have to reorder our priorities every day. Okay, because if you reorder your priorities and know what's important and what's not, I'm not saying that you ignore what a client tells you if they say that something is critical to them, but what you do is you help them analyze it with you and analyze them to a point where they can cope with their own problems. Because if they can cope with their problems and you do that, you're automatically going to reduce your own stress level, and that's where the EI or the EQ, I've heard it referred to too, comes in, because you're able to use your skills to have the client reach a point of let's say well-being, even if their problem is not resolved. They sort of look at it a little differently. And and one of the things that I tell clients all the time to make them stop going crazy over an idea is I say, wait a minute, let's look at things in context. And that one phrase, and I advise everybody to hang on to that one phrase. It forces a client to stop for a second, and I say, look at this in context. And then I try and explain, well, wait a minute. Yes, this person may have screamed and yelled in the workplace, you want to fire them, and they're no good, and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Let's look at it in context. They have their own issues, and blah. So I try and bring the emotional aspects that are causing the client to want to push that onto me. If I bring them down, I'm actually doing a good job for the client as well as myself.
Yes, it's very important because when you do like this, you are acknowledging and you are validating the client's emotions. So this part of validation, the emotion, is the first step when you can go beyond that emotions. From there, from validation, you can go beyond, because when you respond in reactive states, you're gonna increase this, as much you resist, you persist. So validating already the client's needs, that he has a little bit of empathy, So
Yeah.
a lot of instruments and tools to go through, and this is very important to be aware about this emotional intelligence, about emotional state. And for everybody, it's important first to see how how are you feeling with this person, what happens to you. And there are some exercises, and Alina, I'm sure she can share with us some mindfulness that is very helpful in the in balancing and going to the center again.
Yeah,
well,
it's a present moment. It's very important to be aware about present moment, and what is helping us to be in the present moment. It's our breath, and being focused of your breathing, and to help being more focused, you account in your mind, like breathing in inhale 4 times and exhale 4 times. It's a very simple exercise that you can practice even you are in a meeting. You are focused on your breath and in the same time counting your breath. It's simple. Nobody can see you. Nobody can judge you. I mean, it's a very simple coping exercise that we can use always in order to be present in the present moment, because anxiety is when you are worried about the future, even that doesn't exist. It's only in your imagination.
Very true. And let's take a look at the next slide, because we're out of time, everyone. And there's a couple of things I'd like to say. I'd like to give a pitch right now for the Beverly Hills Bar Association Work-Life Balance Committee. It's been very successful, and it's been, and as you just heard, I want to thank Andrea and Alina for organizing this webinar, because this is not just an issue in pandemic times, but it is an issue that we face all the year round. And I encourage everyone to participate and also send in ideas regarding what you might want to see as a specific work-life balance topic.
Yes, this is amazing, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for your participation and for your resources and sharing with us this precious time. And I encourage, yes, all lawyers to share with us what is the most important, topics, and we can organize different webinars. And I want to share with you that we just launched our book, More Than a Lawyer, and I'm gonna ask Beverly Hills Bar Association to give opportunity to give a big discount for our book for all the committee, because it's a precious resources for lawyers, and I'm sure that it's very good instrument for coping in this period
and after this period.
and after.
Yeah. And I also think I can arrange for anybody who wants the book for it to be autographed by its authors.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you very much, okay, everyone, for participating, and we look forward to we will see you at the next webinar.
Thank you,
Beverly Hills.
Okay.
Thank
Ciao.
Thank you, Loris. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.